I have spent years following the trade routes that built empires and destroyed them, and almost nothing on earth has fooled people as completely as the small red fruit I am about to show you. Walk into a kitchen in Sichuan, in Seoul, in Budapest, and you will taste a fire that feels thousands of years old. It isn't. 400 years ago, not one of those kitchens had ever seen a chili. The plant that defines them today came from the other side of the planet, carried by men who were also carrying slaves. This is the hidden geography of chili. Over the next 15 minutes, we are going to follow one wild berry out of a single valley in South America and watch it conquer the world. We will cross 5 continents. We will pass through the kitchens it took over, the empires it served, and the war zones it was turned into a weapon inside. And we will end with a pepper so violent it has already killed a child. Stay with me, because the body count climbs the whole way down. Our journey begins where the chili itself begins, in the dry valleys of what is now Bolivia and Peru. Long before the pyramids, long before writing, the people of these highlands were already eating wild peppers. Researchers have traced chili in the human diet back roughly 9,500 years, which makes it one of the oldest flavors our species ever chose to keep. The first wild chilies were tiny and round and red, no larger than a berry, growing on scrubby bushes across the mountains, and their descendants, peppers like the thick-walled rocoto, still grow in these valleys today. But here is the strange part. That heat was never meant for us. Capsaicin, the chemical that sets your mouth on fire, evolved to stop mammals from eating the fruit at all. Birds feel nothing from it. So birds ate the peppers and scattered the seeds for hundreds of miles, and the plant that was built to punish mammals ended up depending on the one animal it could not burn. Carried north over thousands of years by birds and traders, the chili reached Mexico, and this is where its darker story truly begins. The people here tamed a wild pepper they called the chiltepin, a fiery little globe sometimes called the mother of all chilies. By the time the Aztecs built their empire, chili was everywhere in their world. It was food, it was medicine, it was money, and it was demanded as tribute from the towns they conquered. But it was also a weapon. In an Aztec manuscript that still survives today, there is a painting of a father holding his own child over a fire of burning chilies, forcing the boy to breathe the smoke as punishment. The scribes painted the tears running down the child's face. And the Aztecs did not stop at discipline. Spanish chroniclers later described defenders trapping enemy soldiers inside a sealed room, setting a mountain of chilies alight and letting the smoke do the killing. 5 centuries before tear gas had a name, the chili was already a chemical weapon. That was the plant Europe was about to stumble into. Which brings us to the turning point of this entire map, the moment one plant escaped one continent. When Columbus reached the Caribbean in 1492, he was hunting black pepper, the spice that grew only in distant India and cost a fortune back home. He found chili instead, and because it burned the tongue the same way, he simply called it pepper. The name stuck, even though the two plants are not even related. Then came the people who actually carried it around the world. Not the Spanish, the Portuguese. When Vasco da Gama rounded Africa and reached India in 1498, and when his countrymen seized the port of Goa in 1510, they brought chili seeds with them from Brazil. Within about 30 years, 3 different kinds of chili were already growing around Goa, sold under the name Pernambuco pepper, after the stretch of Brazilian coast they had come from. The Portuguese Empire became the delivery system. Every fort and trading post a fresh doorway, from Mozambique to Macau. And this is the part that rarely makes it into the cookbooks. The same ships that carried chili down the coast of Africa were also carrying enslaved human beings. The spice and the slave trade moved along the same routes, on the same vessels, at the same time. So let us follow the chili off those ships and watch it grow a new face in every land it touched. Our first stop is the country that thought it had discovered it, Spain. Columbus carried pepper seeds back across the Atlantic as early as 1493, and the first chilies grown on European soil were raised not by farmers, but by monks in the gardens of the monastery of Yuste in the hills of western Spain. In one of those valleys, a region called La Vera, the monks ran into a problem. The autumn there was too damp to dry the peppers in the sun, so they hung them over slow oak wood fires instead. That accident created smoked paprika, a deep, woody red spice that Spain still guards as a protected treasure today. The chili had been on the continent for barely a generation, and it had already buried itself in the local soil as if it had always belonged there. From Spain, follow the Portuguese ships south, down the coast of Africa, and you reach the chili's most brutal chapter of all. In Mozambique, Portuguese traders planted a small, ferocious pepper the locals came to call Piri-Piri, or Piri-Piri. It spread along the very coast where the slave trade was at its busiest, and it became the seasoning of that world. In Swahili, the word for pepper, Piri-Piri, still carries the echo of it. A plant from the Americas, carried by European ships, became African the moment it touched African ground, and it traveled inland on the same dark routes that carried human beings in chains. Now turn east, toward the country the chili changed more than any other. India. The Portuguese landing at Goa turned the subcontinent into the largest chili producer on the planet, a title it still holds today. The city of Guntur now runs the biggest chili market in all of Asia. But India did something no other nation did. It turned the chili back into a literal weapon. In the green hills of the northeast grows the ghost pepper, known locally as Bhut Jolokia, which in 2007 was certified as the hottest chili in the world. India's defense scientists took that pepper, extracted its fire, and packed it into hand grenades. By 2016, security forces were using chili grenades to drive militants out of hiding in the mountains of Kashmir. A berry from a Bolivian valley had become military ordnance. Travel further east, into China, and you reach the biggest illusion on this entire journey. Ask anyone in the world to name a fiery cuisine, and they will say Sichuan. Yet Sichuan had no chili at all until the plant arrived from the coast in the 1600s. The very first time a chili appears in the official records of the region is the year 1749. Everything we picture as ancient Sichuan cooking, the deep red oil, the slow-building burn, is younger than the city of Boston. Before the chili, the heat in that kitchen came from a completely different plant, the Sichuan peppercorn, which numbs the tongue rather than burning it. The chili arrived and rewrote that cuisine from the ground up. Cross over to Korea and the same trick has been played again. The beating heart of Korean food is gochujang, the deep red fermented chili paste, and the kimchi that leans on it. Neither one existed in the form we know until the chili reached the peninsula, most likely in the 1590s. The fiery red kimchi that the world now treats as an ancient national tradition is younger than Shakespeare. A Korean king of the era is said to have called the chili paste so irresistible that it was a rice thief because it made people eat far more than they meant to. If you are finding this journey worthwhile, take a second to subscribe, because every video on this channel follows one more of these hidden trails all the way to its end. Now, follow me up into the mountains, because the next stop breaks every rule you have heard so far. High in the Himalayas sits the kingdom of Bhutan, and here the chili stopped being a spice altogether. In Bhutan, the chili is a vegetable. The national dish, ema dachi, is little more than whole chilies stewed in cheese, eaten by the bowl, not the pinch. Families dry crimson peppers in great sheets across their rooftops before the winter. Nowhere else on earth did a plant that everyone else treats as a seasoning become the main course on the plate. Now come back down and head for the heart of Europe, where the chili became something stranger than food. It became a national identity. In Hungary, the dried and ground pepper brought in by the Ottoman Turks turned into paprika, the very soul of the country's cooking. It even won a Nobel Prize. A Hungarian scientist named Albert Szent György used paprika as his raw material to isolate vitamin C, work that earned him the Nobel in 1937. But paprika carries a darker chapter too. In 1994, after the collapse of communism gutted the country's old quality controls, mills began cutting Hungarian paprika with red lead, a toxic industrial pigment, to deepen its color and stretch the supply. Roughly 40 people were hospitalized with lead poisoning. The government was forced to pull every jar of paprika in the entire country off the shelves, in what became the largest food adulteration scandal in its modern history. The national spice had been quietly poisoning the nation. There is one more face I have to show you before the end, because it proves the chili is still being shaped by the events of our own century. Travel to the city of Aleppo in Syria. For generations, the Aleppo pepper, dried and crushed into dark red flakes, was one of the great seasonings of the Silk Road, traded across the Middle East for centuries. Then came the Syrian civil war. The fighting tore through the farmland around Aleppo. The harvests collapsed, and a spice that had survived 1,000 years of empires was driven out of its own homeland almost overnight. Today, much of what is sold as Aleppo pepper is grown across the border in Turkey because the original fields became a battlefield. The chili does not just record ancient history, it records the wars happening right now. Which brings us to the final stop on this map, and the place where the chili turns deadly for real. For almost all of human history, no one could even measure heat. Then, in 1912, a pharmacist named Wilbur Scoville built a scale to rank it, and without meaning to, he started a war. Growers began breeding peppers for one purpose only, to create the hottest object a human being could put in their mouth. They pushed past the Trinidad Moruga scorpion. In 2013, an American grower produced the Carolina Reaper, averaging more than 1.6 million Scoville units. 10 years later, the same man unveiled Pepper X, certified at an average of 2.69 million Scoville units, hot enough that raw exposure can blister human skin. And this is where the body count stops being history and becomes the present. In 2023, a 14-year-old boy named Harris Wolobar ate a single tortilla chip coated with extract from these super-hot peppers as part of an online dare. Hours later, he collapsed and died, and the autopsy pointed to the chili. A plant that began as a tiny berry in a South American valley, spread by birds that could not even feel its heat, had traveled 9,500 years and halfway around the planet to kill a child in a school hallway. So the next time you feel that familiar burn, remember what you are actually tasting. It is not just heat. It is a map of empire, conquest, slavery, and survival, folded into one small fruit. This single pepper crossed every ocean, toppled the flavor of entire civilizations, served as money, as medicine, and as a weapon, and helped write the course of human history while almost no one noticed. If you want to keep following these hidden histories, the true stories behind the things we eat every single day, subscribe, and I will take you to the next one.